Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Can we please move to NFSP 50500? We're now moving on to the summer of 2016, June 2016, and a meeting of the Council. If we scroll over the page, please, over to page 5, you can see that by this time you are Chief Executive Officer. I think that, did the title change over time?
Yes, it did.
Could we now turn to page 22? And there is a section on any other business. If we scroll down, we have there, Peter Montgomery asked what the policy of the NFSP was in regard to Freeth solicitors who are asking sub-postmasters that they believe suffered losses as a result of Horizon to allow Freeths to work on their behalf and take the post office to court. The CEO, so that's you, explained that Freeths are basically ambulance chasers. Freeths are desperate to get sub-postmasters to engage with them. Freeths also maintain that the sub-postmaster contract is unfair with regard to the sub-postmaster being responsible for losses. It is up to the individual to decide whether they wish to sign a contract or not. Legally, a contract does not have to be fair. So is that your view as expressed at that meeting?
Yes, but we've been told we'd actually taken advice about the contract some years before, and we were told that we engaged solicitors in London that a contract doesn't have to be fair because you know, if you sign it, it has been unfair. I think everybody feels for a long time that the contract has been too one-sided towards the post service, and your members express that on regular occasions. Yeah.
And were you upset with Freeths because they were undermining the position of the NFSP at this stage?
Well, we'd never had much engagement with Freeth whatsoever, but I do, you know, when I say ambulance chasers, they did end up, if it wasn't for government intervention, the sub-postmasters that had the case ended up getting very little money, you know, and I think a lot of the money was swallowed up in costs, wasn't it?
The NFSP's policy has always been that it is a robust system and we have full confidence in it. That was the policy that you explained earlier. If we scroll over, please. Do not believe the system is systemically faulty. Most people that blame Horizon for losses are overinflating their cash declarations, false accounting. Where did you get that from?
The reality is there some people that have lost money because of Horizon bugs and faults and the post office's stance at criminal cases? Absolutely, there has been. However, and I've not been given it. You've been very careful not allowing me to say this, but this has always been the case. The postmasters. Everything's always been kept in-house within the post office industry, same with Royal Mail. And I've been at cases over the years, even when it was the old manual system, where errors sometimes, I mentioned the stack, just add, in the old days you had to do things with pencil, you had to add up 2 pensions. If you got that wrong, you could lose money. So there's always been mistakes made. Most of the errors that postmasters have are genuine mistakes by them or their staff. That goes for the old manual system, the ledger system, and the Horizon system. The vast majority of complaints about Horizon were nothing to do with Horizon. They were basically just things being done wrong, not by intention, but by mistake.
And how did you form the opinion that most people that blame Horizon for losses are overinflating their cash declarations? How did you come to that conclusion?
Well, one of the key red flags the Post Office used to use, they couldn't do it so much under the manual system, but it was about cash declarations. Under the old manual system, you were meant to put your cash declarations in every night as well. But lots of people didn't put them in. No one really checked the old ledgers until auditors came out. So you might have had a situation where you hadn't put the overnight cash holding in for ages and you do the balance once a week or once a month. But with Horizon, you had to make your cash declaration every night. So a lot of the times, and I remember an office who were claiming extra fivers all the time, and when auditors went out, instead of having about 8,000 or 9,000 fivers in the branch, there was none at all. And the reality is, and the vast majority of sub-postmasters and the vast majority of claimants on the Horizon inquiry are decent, honourable, honest people. I won't dispute that for a minute, but it's a franchise that's been struggling for even before the Horizon. And people, that's why we used to encourage people to take the compensation and leave with their restructuring programmes. So, yes, so the post office were aware when, and it was a red flag, when it seemed to be the money they needed for running the branch, they were ordering more in than what the cash declarations would suggest. So if your cash declaration said you had...
Mr Thomson, we need to move on.
Well, you're asking, I have to give a bit of background. And,
we don't have time for the level of detail that you're going into right now in respect of a simple question, which is how you personally formed the opinion.
But I'm giving you that background of why I formed that opinion.
Okay, let's move on to the next bullet point. Sub-postmasters take money sometimes, and members of staff also take money. Reminded that members of the council should adhere to collective cabinet responsibility. Is that in effect saying that all members needed to toe the line in respect of the line regarding the Horizon system?
Well, you make a collective decision, and it's like the British Cabinet, or it should be like the British Cabinet. You make a collective decision, and that becomes the policy of the organisation. Yes, that's correct.
Could we please turn to poll 00248-962? Moving now to 2017, 27th of April. Page 5, please. If we start on the bottom of page 5, there is an email from Andrew Parsons, who is an external lawyer advising the Post Office. If we scroll down, please. He is emailing Thomas Moran and Roderick Williams at the Post Office. He says, please see attached a letter from Freeths regarding advertising the GLO. Most of this is just process points, which we will deal with in due course. However, in the penultimate paragraph, they ask for the Post Office's consent to place an advert in Sub-Postmaster magazine. And he says in the final paragraph, are the NFSP still generally supportive of the Post Office and Horizon? If so, it would be quite a powerful message if Freeths approached the NFSP and the NFSP refused to allow the advert on the grounds that they thought the litigation was meritless. This type of message would have to be reported up to Freeths insurers and funders, and it would perhaps knock their confidence if a key union was standing by the Post Office rather than the claimants. If we scroll up to page 4, please, the middle of page 4, Mr. Moran responds to Mr. Parsons, and he says, thanks. George is very negative about Freeth's approach, and I do not think will accept this in his publication. It's not our decision. For the avoidance of doubt, we have no direct control over the magazine, which is edited independently by the NFSP. So the obvious approach would be to inform them of that and redirect them to contact the NFSP direct. In the meantime, I would inform George of the possibility by forwarding the letter, which I'll do now. Scrolling up, Mr. Parsons then advises the Post Office. He says, Tom, be careful about emailing George. Your email may not be privileged. Keep it neutral. And Mr. Moran responds, Nick Beale will be speaking to George on a planned call later today, so we'll note this to him. He's absolutely confirmed that the magazine is entirely an FSP, so our letter should simply make it clear and redirect to them. If we scroll up to page 2, Mr. Parsons then responds, and he says, a call with George is better than an email, no audit trail to disclose. And if we turn to the first page, please, Mr. Moran reports back after having had a conversation. He says, I can confirm that we have made George Thomson at NFSP aware, and the response should be, as advised, to redirect Freeths to NFSP directly, as we have no control over the publication. Do you recall a conversation with the Post Office regarding the approach from Freeths to advertise in the NFSP magazine?
I think we did discuss it. We work, as I said before, I make no apology, we work very closely with the Post Office on behalf of the franchise holders. And that's quite common. If you have a franchise, you work with the company that gives you the franchise. That's common common behaviour.
And did you refuse to advertise the group litigation in the magazine?
Well, this is where I'm not sure. I don't know. I've got a feeling it went in, but I'm not 100%. I really can't recall, but I've got a feeling they maybe did get an advert in the sub-postmaster, but I'm not 100%. I could be wrong on that.
Okay. Could we turn to poll 00162362? I'm now going back in time slightly to 2015. I just want to ask you a few questions very briefly about the relationship between yourselves and the Post Office's communications team and their senior executive. This is 2015 in relation to the mediation scheme. And if we scroll down, there's an email from Angela van der Bogerd to Mark Davis at the Post Office. And it's a paragraph that I'd just like, it's that middle paragraph, the bottom paragraph now, the final sentence. She says to Mark Davis, in relation to this particular issue, she says, I've discussed this issue with George Thomson, and we agree an approach using the Sub-Postmaster magazine to try to rebuild the confidence in Horizon. Do you recall a conversation with Angela van der Bogerd about using the Sub-Postmaster magazine to try and rebuild the confidence in Horizon?
I don't recall it, but given my strong support for the systemic nature of Horizon, it wouldn't surprise me, no, but I can't recall it, but I would imagine it's correct.
Could we turn to poll 0031479? 19th of April 2015, Mr. Davis emails you, Hi George, BBC is planning to go to town on second site report tomorrow, really attacking Post Office. The journos dealing with it are, and he gives their details. Up to you, of course, if you want to get involved, but wanted to let you know. Did Mark Davis see you as a convenient voice in favour of the Horizon system?
I've got a lot of time for Mark Davis. We worked closely, and again, I make no apologies, not just on Horizon. That's one of the things that I've got in my witness statement. We had to work closely with the Post Office on government work, network restructuring, all the issues. So we were used to dealing with it. In fact, I think it was David McConnell, he had, the Post Office were cutting back staff, and we had a vacancy in our communications team, and David McConnell, because he knew the Post Office inside out because he was working there, David McConnell joined us as one of our, I think he was a press officer, I think. So, you know, that was a close tie. We had good working relationships with the Post Office. And again, as I said, as the franchise, as the organisation who represents the franchise holders who've all got lots of money invested in the company, we obviously have to work closely with the company. That's common sense.
If we turn to poll 003155623. If we look at the bottom email on that page, 29th of April 2015, there is an email to yourself. Hi George, Roland Gribben at the Telegraph is inquiring about whether there is an update about Horizon. See below. I haven't spoken to him yet. Is there anything further to say at the moment? If we scroll up, you respond to the Post Office and you say, hi guys, are we still battening down the hatches? Very best, George. And Mark Davis responds, hi George, we're being pretty robust in pushing back, to be honest, not necessarily always reported. Not really sure what he's getting at here. Is this a typical example of your relationship?
Was this after Paula and Angela van den Bogen gave evidence to the Select Committee in 2015? I'm trying to... was that after it or before it? Was it after it?
I can show you, if we turn to the second page, there's a little more detail.
I'm not 100%, but...
It says, here's the statement we released after the Select Committee.
Right. To be honest with you, within Post Office Limited, and I was up at meetings, you know, a couple of days after the Select Committee. My view was quite clear, and I expressed it very strongly, that the performance of Angela and Paula, and I'm not decrying them, they've got a job to do, but they should be not open and honest with these committees and inquiry. I thought it was a car crash of a performance, and that was well shared by many people at senior level, and that's, I think, that batten down the hatches was the feedback from that. That when I went in, and this is truthful, I was so concerned with how they didn't have a grip of it, that I said they should basically, anybody who had something in the system for a claim, they should settle the claim and get this brought to a head, but get this brought to a close, because it was so damaging for the brand, and these people who were genuinely making these claims should be just settled and get it brought to a conclusion, get it done. And no, if I'd done that 8 or 9 years ago, it'd probably been better for everybody, including people who were affected with it. That's how bad. That's what I'm pretty certain. That's what 90% certain. That's what it refers to. Batten down the hatches.
Could we please turn to poll 0022828? The next month, 10th of May. Halfway down the first page, please. An email from Mark Davis. He says, our media relationships with George and team are very good at present. He has been tipping us off privately about people sniffing around Horizon, and I genuinely don't see this as coming from him. It's in relation to a negative article. Were you tipping off the post office privately about people sniffing around Horizon?
I've made the point time after time today that Horizon is a robust system, and that working with the post office as an organisation that represents postmasters with their franchises and having a lot of money invested in the brand, I work closely with the post office. But I've told you that about 7 times or 8 times today, so it shouldn't come as a surprise.
Could we please turn to poll 001622628? We start on page 2, please. 19th of August 2015, an email from Callum Greenhow, who was at that point NFSP Branch Secretary, South of Scotland Branch. And if we scroll down, he says, George, I have received the BSc from you yesterday in response to the recent programmes aired by the BBC on the Post Office. And he addresses the Panorama programme. Could we scroll over the page? I'll read to you 3 paragraphs from his email. He says at the top here, imagine for a moment if what was highlighted through the programme was true. Where would that leave those sub-postmasters affected? Where would it leave the Post Office, and where would it leave the NFSP? If we scroll down to the final 2 paragraphs, he's highlighting there the developments over time. And he says, there are just too many impartial experts that cast doubt on the post office's and subsequently the NFSP's position. It's the criminal justice expert, the computer expert, the forensic accountant, the computer programmer, and of course 144 MPs. The NFSP should be echoing the Prime Minister in calling for every assistance to get to the bottom of this issue, to ensure once and for all, on behalf of all members, past, present and future, that there categorically is no issue now, nor has there ever been a problem with Horizon. It would be encouraging if the NFSP showed support for those 20 sub-postmasters that are currently having their cases reviewed. None of us would wish any innocent individual to have their reputations, livelihood and liberty ruined incorrectly. Sometimes things go wrong, and let's face it, we've been around post office long enough to know it often does. Your response to Mr. Greenhow is on the previous page. You say as follows, thank you for sending me your individual thoughts on Horizon and sharing further individual thoughts on our forum. My statement comments over the last 12 years on Horizon have been on behalf of the Executive Council, both as an Executive Officer and then General Secretary. My comments, however, are on behalf of Executive Council. I can assure you that the Executive Council still believe that the Horizon system is robust and safe. Once again, thank you for contacting me on this important subject. A strong rebuttal to Mr. Greenhow there.
Well, can you want me to answer that? I'll come on to that in a minute, but Callum actually was, words are cheap, actions are difficult. Callum was in place for over a year and a bit before Justice Fraser and the Federation's position. So when he was in a position to change anything, he didn't. Basically, he was in a position for a year and a half to change the Federation's support of Horizon, and he didn't. Now, turning to the email, it was always believed by many of the officers on the Executive Council that Callum, at that particular time, was close to a few people round about the CW postmaster section. And we believe that he obviously spoke to other people and that they were not necessarily coming direct from Callum, but on behalf of a small group around the CW.
But isn't it reasonable what he's suggesting to you there, that all the NFSP really needed to do was show support for a small number of sub-postmasters who are currently having their cases reviewed?
I've answered the question. The question was that Callum at that time, we believed, was quite supportive of some of the people who joined the CW, and that was in the background of that answer as well.
And what we see at page 1, at the bottom of page 1, is what you did with that information. You sent it to David McConnell and Mark Davis at the post office for your information. Why would you send that email from Callum Greenhow and your response to the post office communications director?
I've made the point many times today. Our job was to protect sub-postmasters' franchises, make them as valuable as we could. There was a small amount of postmasters who claimed to have problems with Horizon in comparison to the billions of transactions, and working with the owners of the brand that you work for is what I would expect a good trade association to be doing. We never seen them as the opposition, as the enemy. Sometimes unions may see it that way. We always worked with them, and now and again there'd be spats, and I'd have fallouts with Paula. But we worked with the company that held the franchise as our members, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that, because the better you can make a franchise, the theory is the better rewarded your members will be.
Did you see Mr. Greenhow as the enemy?
Not in particular, because I was a supporter of Callum becoming the chief executive after I left. So not particularly. People can have views, people can change their views. And as I said, Callum was part of the team, and when I left, there was no change at all to the Federation's position until I believe they got quite a rough. Well, they weren't invited, but Justice Fraser gave the Federation a bit of a kicking. I wasn't there at the time, and I think that's when the Federation's position changed to basically, it's all the post office's fault, which it is. And sorry. But I'm trying to give it more nuance. There was more going on than just the post office making a Horlicks of taking people to court on duff evidence where they knew people were lying. I could sit here all day and just repeat that. It was their fault. It's their fault. And it was. But it's more nuanced, because losses and suspensions happen long before Horizon. The volumes are massive, and you show 8 or 9 emails at me. We were dealing with billions of transactions.
Mr. Thomson, is it just a coincidence that these emails of the very close relationship between yourself and the Post Office's communications team, is it a coincidence that they were occurring around the time that you were negotiating these significant sums of money?
Absolutely not. I've said to you before, countless times, my support for Horizon didn't get worse or better at the time of these discussions. It never changed, and I've been as big a supporter. And what you don't get from this is that you can't answer why Horizon now is doing £3.5 billion £3.5 billion of banking transactions a month for a system that has been rubbished and kicked to hell over the last 7, 8 years, in particular the last 2 years.
Thank you, sir. Those are all of the questions that I have.
Thank you.
We have some questions for Mr. Steen, followed by Ms. Page, followed by Ms. Watt.
Right. And I take it, ladies and gentlemen, that you can accommodate my timetable this afternoon.
So, if you seem to be speaking, I'm afraid the sound's not on this side.
Sorry, can you say that again? Your mic was on.
The mic looks on, it's got green on it.
It's on now.
Yeah, you're on now, Mr. Steen. It certainly.
So I'm afraid we can't hear you.
You can't hear me, right? Well, then just ask the question.
I'm afraid we still can't hear you, sir.
Well, that's very strange.
So can you hear me?
Yes, clearly.
We can now hear you, sir.
If I've learned one thing about the world in this inquiry, is that occasionally there are glitches, Mr. Steele.
Perhaps that's a surprise to Mr. Thomson. Mr. Thomson, many of our clients have been watching your evidence today and are of the view that you got into the post office bed with Paula Venables and did whatever she wanted you to do. Is that a fair description of what was going on?
No, it's nonsense.
You've given evidence and you've spoken about the fact that, and I quote, this is about 12:38 today. We had problems under the old manual system as well, you said. People were suspended under the old manual system. People lost their houses under the old manual system. Nothing really changed.
Sorry.
I see. So that's something that you were aware of when you went into post at the National Federation of Sub-Postmasters, is it?
Of course it was, yeah.
Right. What did you do to try and change that position under the old system so that people did not lose their houses, did not lose their livelihoods, Mr. Thomson?
No one ever wants someone to get in that position. However, cash is the tool of the trade of the post office industry. And we used to do billions of pounds of value transactions a month just for the DWP alone. So the difference between our owners and, say, a shopkeeper or a newsagent was there was always significant sums of cash around. And the vast majority of postmasters were straight as a die. Mistakes could be made, of course. I said before, people adding things up, but you were responsible for it. I could give you so many cases. For example, the Federation would send someone along, say on a Thursday morning or on a Friday morning. The auditors would phone, we would go along, we would try and get a resolution. But depending on the kind of money it was missing, that's when it could have life-changing implications, both under the old system and the new system.
Right. Well, could you try answering my question?
I was answering your question.
Now, what I asked was this, that you were aware under the old system that people lost their houses under the old manual system. And your evidence is that continued under the Horizon system. That's what you're saying,
Absolutely, yes.
What did you, when you were at the National Federation of Sub-Postmasters, do about that, Mr. Thomson?
Well, when we were changing, for example, when we were changing to Horizon Online, I sent an email out to members reminding them that the auditors were coming, and when you were changing from the first stage of Horizon to the second stage of Horizon, there would be a full cash and stock declaration. That was me warning them to make sure it was right. And it goes back to when it was manual. We always told members, you have to make sure that the cash and stock that you have there is correct, because your contract is liable for it. And to be honest with you, given the volumes of business we were doing, particularly for the government knew it was auditors were a deterrent. It was a deterrent for postmasters not to borrow or take post office money. And every year, there was 2 or 3, it's just a fact of life, I know you're shaking your heads, 200 or 300 people under the old manual system were suspended. Not prosecuted, some were prosecuted. 200 or 300 were suspended. It was ongoing, and it was the same with postmen. Now, we tried to keep that in-house as much as we can, because it's not just about protecting the brand, it was about protecting postmasters' standing in their community. But you always get, postmasters are decent people. But if your circumstances change, and let's say someone lost their job or you were going to lose your house, there was a case, an old postmistress in Scotland under the manual system. They done an audit and she was £6,000 short. And she admitted to them that the post office salary had become so low and unaffordable that she had been paying her electricity bill and gas bill for the last 5 years. She said, I always intended to put it back. She never got prosecuted, I may add. I always intended to put it back, but I could never afford to do it. So this is part of what... There's no balance to the thing. It's almost like the post office problems and balancing problems only started with Horizon. That's an absolute nonsense.
Now, Mr. Thomson, we need to finish by 3.
Well,
we have a go at that.
I'll come back if I have to.
The position in relation to sub-postmasters, are you trying to say that the ones that fell afoul of the system under the old manual system and the Horizon system, are you trying to say that they're collateral losses, like you're a World War I general ordering the troops over the top into the Somme?
No, it's a fact.
Is that what you're trying to say?
No, it's a fact of life. If you use post office and government money, either taking it for yourself or staff take it, you're liable for it. Now, if you didn't have that, the government used to pre-fund the benefits to the tune of hundreds of millions of pounds a month. If you didn't have that kind of deterrent, then you couldn't run your company for obvious reasons. But that money is a tool of the trade, and the money is still a tool of the trade. And that's what concerns me going forward, because at the moment in time, the post office basically have got a company that, if it wasn't owned by the government, would be bankrupt as we speak. And that would be collateral
Thomson,
damage.
so your view and your evidence is that the contract and the interpretation of the contract by the post office, which is that sub-postmasters must pay up regardless of fault. Your view.
No, I never said regardless of fault.
Well,
I never said
your
that.
view is
Don't put words in my mouth, please.
well, I was going to put the words back into your mouth by repeating what you said, which is that it was a deterrent. The system was a deterrent, putting the onus seemed to be in what you're talking about regarding audits on the sub-postmaster. Was that your view?
Having an audit, having auditors was a deterrent. Yes, it was well known. And I joined the post office at 18, and I knew from the age of 19 that the post office done private prosecutions. Royal Mail still do some private prosecutions as we speak, but that's mostly against dog owners that have been warned and warned about their dogs biting postmen. So I knew from 19-year-old, 18, 19-year-old, that we'd done private prosecutions, because we had hundreds of millions of pounds of government money sloshing about in post office safes. Now that's a fact. Now, in an ideal world, you want nobody to take it. But when you get to cases where you turn up and postmasters are met, should have £60,000 cash. Why you got 30,000? This is before Horizon. Well, wait a minute. Let me finish. So I took 30,000.
We need to make progress.
So I take it.
We need to make progress, Mr. Thomson. I think even you recognise that. Right. Can we go to a document, please? POL 00 189 165. And page 3 of that document, please. Now, if we go to page 3 and scroll down, please. Right. Thank you. That's ideal. Okay. Now, this relates to a sub-postmistress called Jennifer O'Dell. And we can see the dates that we're concerned with in 2009. I'm just going to point out a couple of examples, but all of the examples essentially are very similar. So this is Mrs. O'Dell talking to the Post Office Helpline, and these are notes that are made by a Post Office investigator. Okay? All right. So let's look at the 5th of November entries as examples. 5th of November 2009. Spoke to Mrs. O'Dell today. Now, this is talking about the helpline, the Post Office helpline. Do you understand that, Mr. Thomson?
Yeah.
Okay. Spoke to Mrs. O'Dell today. Office has a loss of £7,000. She's been carrying the loss since May. Explained to postmistress that this loss should have been made good when she's been rolling her TP, but she refuses to make it good, as she said the loss is not hers. And then the 2nd, 5th of November, so postmaster reports having 1,000 loss a month since May, now totalling £7,000 plus. She refuses to make good, as she blames the system for the losses. All right? So we can see what's happening here. Mrs. O'Dell's phoning up the Post Office helpline, and she's saying, look, there's the system. I don't know what's wrong. There's something wrong with the system. It's adding up. Keeps on building up to substantial losses of thousands of pounds, as you can see. Do you understand that's what she's saying? Do you understand that, Mr. Thomson?
Yeah, I do.
Okay. And she's being told, as we can see by the helpline, look, you need to make up for these losses. Did you know that that was what was going on with the Post Office helpline?
Postmasters were responsible.
Did you know that was going on with the helpline organised by the Post Office?
I'm not sure.
Well, it's a bit of a black and white answer, isn't it? You either did or you didn't, Mr. Thomson. Did you know that the Post Office helpline was deterring people by saying, you pay up for shortfalls, it's up to you to pay? Did you know that?
I probably did, yeah, but can I just come back on that point? It was in the contract. People make mistakes. The attitude the questions you're given is that every single mistake it was made and every single shortage that a postmaster had, and you started off manually and you're now on to Horizon, must have been because of the Horizon system. That's fundamentally incorrect, what you're saying there.
Well, I don't think that's what Mr. Steen is saying, but the question is simply this. Were you aware, Mr. Thomson, that generally speaking, if a postmaster rang up the helpline and said, I've got this problem, and the result is I've got a shortage of £6,000, the stock answer from the helpline would be, well, it's your responsibility to make that good.
Myself or some of the team would be aware of that without a doubt, yeah.
Fine, thank you.
So the situation that you accept was that sub-postmasters were being told to pay up despite the fact, as Mrs. O'Dell did, she was saying, look, I don't know what's going on. It's not my fault. It's the system. You knew that. Is that right?
Anybody could blame Horizon on a mistake that they made or their staff could make. And in fact, I think there was over 200 sub-postmaster staff were actually prosecuted. Not the postmasters, not the CW members, but their staff. So staff can take money as well. Of course they can. But what's coming across is that every single mistake that was made or every single claim mistake was down to Horizon. And again, that is wrong.
Do you now accept, Mr. Thomson, that there were a number of bugs, errors and defects in the Horizon system that had the potential to affect and did affect the integrity of Post Office branch accounts? Do you now accept that?
I now accept that all the prosecutions that took place were unsafe because the Post Office were aware of the things that you were saying, yeah.
Do you now accept the evidence?
That's not Mr. Steen's question, Mr. Thomson. If I tell you that in this inquiry, both the Post Office and Fujitsu have formally admitted that there existed bugs, errors and defects which had the capability to cause balancing losses, do you dispute what they admit?
No, I'm not disputing that.
Fine, thank you.
Because in fact, I was reading a quote from Fujitsu, the people that run the system, that own the system. They accept that those types of bugs, errors and defects existed within the system.
But the point you make is that any single, regardless of what you said there, any single mistake that was made, even if it wasn't Horizon, as long as it was blamed on a potential bug or a potential glitch in the system, would be down to the system's fault. That means that the company couldn't run even now. If every single mistake was blamed on a glitch in Horizon, and everybody blamed that, then quite frankly, why would you not be tempted?
But the Post Office and the NFSP were tied together, weren't they? The survival of the Post Office meant the survival of the NFSP, but without the Post Office, the NFSP couldn't survive.
Well, I've already
Do you agree with that?
No, I've already said that because we lost that many members. We did the right thing for the network. We got about 8,000 members out with big chunks of compensation, so they got their investment protected, right? Some people that had Horizon problems as well, we got a temporary in there or got them reinstated so they could get out with money. So yes, after the three closure programmes or three restructuring programmes, whatever you want to call them, yes, our organisation basically either had to do a deal with the Post Office or merge into CW or
that deal,
else.
Mr. Thomson, that deal included contractually accepting that the NFSP should not do anything to criticise or undermine the Post Office. You essentially betrayed your own membership, didn't you?
I don't accept
Mr.
that for a minute. My position on Horizon changed not one jot in the work we did on a deal with the Post Office. But as I said earlier on, I did realise that it was forcing us to pull our teeth in other directions on paying things, and actually, for me, I no longer wanted to do it.
Did you tell the membership of the NFSP that a deal had been struck in exchange for the Post Office shilling, that you would be gagged from criticising and undermining the Post Office? Were they told about the details of that deal, Mr. Thomson?
We weren't gagged, and it was passed.
Did you tell them the details?
We weren't gagged, and it was passed at a special conference by the membership. That's reality. It wasn't George Thomson who passed it. It wasn't the Executive Council. It was the membership that passed it at a special conference.
Now, you've demonstrated, Mr. Thomson, in your evidence that you're aggressive, you're belligerent, and that your work on behalf of the Post Office, it seems, ignored the very sub-postmasters that you represented through the union of which you were a member. Do you accept that?
I dispute that, and, you know, to be called belligerent by yourself is a bit strange.
All right.
One last question, sir.
Right, yeah.
Do you think if you'd turned your aggressiveness and belligerence on the Post Office, actually you might have done some good for sub-postmasters?
I don't accept your question. It's a nonsense.
Thank you, sir.
Right, thank you.
Do you know an NFSP representative called Norman Bradbrook?
Yeah, for a long time, Norman was. Yeah, he's a good age now. Yeah, well, he was a long time ago. Yeah.
Did you say? Did I catch that right? That he was a good agent?
Age, sorry,
good age.
He was quite a lot older than most of the team.
Right. What sort of a person was he from your point of view? Did you like him? Did he fit in at the NFSP?
I've not really got a view on that. I knew of him. I knew he could be seen as being a bit not eccentric. He was a nice old guy.
All right. Well, in July 2001, one of my clients, Mr. Parmod Kalia, he was a member of the NFSP, and he sought assistance from the NFSP when he was being investigated over a shortage. The representative who attended his interview was Norman Bradbrook. At that time, 2001, you'd have still been area secretary, is that right? You weren't yet on the executive.
Yeah, I was area secretary for Scotland, yes, that's correct.
And Mr. Colin Baker was general secretary. Is that right?
Yeah, Colin would be general secretary then, yeah.
And the NFSP was already clear under his leadership that Horizon was a good thing. Is that fair?
That's correct.
Now, bear in mind, Mr. Kalia had been a postmaster for 11 years at that point without any difficulty, and this was 2001, so not long after Horizon was rolled out. Mr. Bradbrook attended Mr. Kalia's interview and gave him this advice. He said, Mr. Kalia, you should admit that you've stolen the money. That's the best way of keeping your office and keeping out of being prosecuted. Admit you've stolen the money, give them a story, pay the money back. Was that the sort of advice that you might have given as an area secretary to anyone who sought your assistance?
No, we would tell people to come clean about it, and we would try and get a solution to that. And most of the time it was, depending on the money, but if most of the time it was get a hardship payment to pay it back, and in other words, get deducted every month from your salary, and that way you kept your position. In particular, when people were going to leave under network restructuring, urban network reinvention, and network change, network transformation, we would always try and help them make sure they could get out with their compensation if possible.
All right, but in this instance, you're saying that perhaps if somebody comes clean, that's the right thing, you think, is it?
Only if they did it, yeah.
Only if they did it. All right, well, that sort of advice, do you accept that sort of advice is pretty helpful to Post Office investigators?
Well, I don't know, I didn't give it. You're asking me something that happened I was the area secretary, Colin Baker was the general secretary.
No, that sort of advice, that sort of come clean advice tell them you did it advice
No.
helpful to the investigators? No?
Only tell me you did it if you did it. You know, what kind of justice would that be? Telling somebody to do it if they didn't do it. And I mean, sometimes it was. I mean, I gave the example in Scotland. It was the father. The father was absolutely wonderful, about £100,000, and he said, "I haven't taken £100,000," and he hadn't. It was his son. And it was found out his son had a gambling problems. These things happen, and when you this is why I've in my statement I've tried to give a lot of nuance, and I haven't been allowed to obviously go on to it because that's not the narrative. But the reality is that when money is there's a temptation. The vast majority of sub-postmasters didn't succumb to temptation, but some did because the franchise was struggling. And that's why we needed free restructuring programmes. People couldn't make a living. They couldn't pay their bills. That example I gave in Scotland of the old lady up north.
Mr. Thomson, can you accept that if you gave advice for somebody to make an admission, that was helpful to the investigators? Can you accept that or not?
Not necessarily. It would depend on the circumstances if it was helpful or not. Tell them the truth. The best help you can give somebody if they're due the post office a lot of money.
All right. You see, on the one hand, it can leave somebody like Mr. Carlier high and dry, yes, because he goes to prison, he's disgraced, his family savings are gone. But on the other hand, Mr. Bradbrook's presence in the interview, it gives the investigators cover, doesn't it? Because it gives the appearance of being fair, doesn't it? Do you see that?
I can see that, but this is what I find difficult to accept. People say, well, for example, I was £30,000 short. How could that happen if it wasn't Horizon? It could easily happen. If there's £60,000 in my safe and I'm desperate and I take £30,000 and I keep it and I spend it, and almost like the questions have been asked here, all of a sudden it has to be Horizon because money can't disappear. Well, I'm sorry, that money didn't disappear. It was taken.
Well, Mr. Thomson, the issues around what happened to the money are perhaps for other people. Let's just come back to the role of the NFSP as representatives in interviews.
Well, I wasn't General Secretary in 2001, so I'll finish with that question.
Well, how about then this? Your role as General Secretary was pretty much the same, but writ large, wasn't it? You provided cover for the Post Office leadership, because on the one hand, you left the sub-postmasters who'd been wronged high and dry, but on the other hand, you gave the impression for the Post Office leadership that they were being fair, that they were listening, that they were doing everything that they could to make sure that the sub-postmasters were looked after, whilst actually riding roughshod over them, Mr. Thomson.
I don't accept that. And I was advised that I should come along here and just blame it on the post office, apologise. I'm trying to give it more nuance. And in fact, I believe because the Federation thought I was going to be more robust, that they refused for me to have a lawyer here today. They refused to help me with legal costs here today because they knew I was going to be more robust. So I've come here today without a solicitor because the National Federation of Sub-Postmasters didn't like the fact that I was going to be robust and tell the truth, not just come along and apologise for the sake of apologising. And as I said before, the NFSP had a year and a half after I left to change their policy about Horizon, and they didn't do it. So I'll have no... I'm going to be talking with the Federation about my position. Their position didn't change for a year and a half when it could have changed.
Thank you, sir. Those are my questions.
Right. Ms. Watt, please.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Thomson, I appear for the NFSP, and the organisation of today has some questions for you which I'm going to put. So I'm just going to start by summarising, and then I'll have a couple of questions after that. As we've seen and heard in the evidence, you had received numerous complaints about Horizon across the years. People such as Lee Castleton and Sir Alan Bates wrote to you, not about their cases, but to alert you as the General Secretary of the NFSP to Horizon and the many issues. What you did was forward Sir Alan's email to Paula Venables within a very short space of time and describe it as rubbish. There were questions from your own members asking if there is not something that needs to be looked at. Mark Baker and others tried to raise issues before eventually leaving the organisation. Everyone is shut down. So the question is, as the General Secretary of the membership organisation, how could you have done that instead of ask yourself the question, is there not something in this? And do something about it to help your members and others.
Well, firstly, if we're going to take the Mark Baker part of it, Mark Baker was more concerned. I think Mark had some issues with Horizon, but Mark's biggest concern and why we left was he felt that network transformation was wrong for the network, and there was more arguments about that. But again, I've reiterated my point time after time. Our members were franchise holders. They'd invested significant sums of money, and we worked closely with Post Office Limited. And I make no apology for that. Why would the membership organisation of the franchise holders not be working with the company to make the brand the best it could? It's common sense, and that's what we did. And I'll make no apology for that.
Mr. Thomson, it was all there in front of you, but you would not see it. Isn't that so?
Well, I work with the Executive Council, all the area officers, the branch secretaries, the Executive Council. It's not just a one-man show. The Executive Council, and I took on the mantle from Colin Baker. The policy and the position never changed. It never changed. Colin was a big supporter of Horizon because, like myself, he realised that if we didn't get Horizon, the network would have collapsed. 400 million of government funding would have left straight away as pensions were put into the bank. So we've always been big supporters of the Horizon system. But again, the point I've said before, I'll reiterate, the Federation had a year and a half after I left to, and it only moved its position when Justice Fraser, I believe, said some remarks. So for a year and a half, you could have easily have changed your position. But of course, is it just George Thomson? Well, the Fed existed after me, and it had, as I said before, a year and a half to do something about it before Lord Justice Fraser, and did nothing about it.
Mr. Thomson, will you not accept that under the time you were the General Secretary, that in relation to Horizon, your members didn't get the help that they needed?
Again, I'll reiterate the point. The billions and billions of transactions, a tiny, and I'm sorry if it's the truth, but that's the reality. And I wonder if the inquiry done any work about what percentage of transactions, the billions of transactions, ended up with claims against it. Be a small fraction. And over 100,000 people have used the Horizon system since it came in.
Thank you, Mr. Thomson.
Thank you. Now, Mr. Thomson, you've mentioned your witness statement on a number of occasions. Can I assure you that I have read it twice recently and once when I first saw it, so that I'm very familiar with its contents. And further, if it has not already been published, it will soon be published for everyone who is interested to read it. So the points which you have made in your witness statement, but which you may not have been asked direct questions about during the course of today, will be well known to anyone who wants to familiarise themselves with it, all right? And in particular, I am fully familiar with it.
It would have been nice to be asked some of these questions that I've got my witness statement today, but it doesn't.
Well, that's as may be. The plain fact is that ultimately, all of your evidence, written and oral, will be taken into account by me when I make my report. That said, if in the course of the next few minutes you wish to say to me anything that you think you need to cover orally, I will allow you to speak to me for 5 minutes or so to make those points, Mr. Thomson.
Here, open here, yeah.
No, yes,
yeah,
no.
That's good. Just to repeat what I've said on numerous occasions, my problem always has been that was there some bad justice handed out with the Post Office? Yes, there was. Was there some stupidity on steroids management where you would take people to court and ruin their lives and prosecute them when you actually knew that your witnesses were lying? That's stupidity. It's absolute stupidity, right? And it would have been easy just to come here today and stick to that script, and everything else was I'm not sure or I can't recall. But there's more nuance in that, and the inquiry is not taking any real account in the fact that you had all these problems before Horizon. You had hundreds of postmasters suspended every year. You have people going to prison before it. And some of the questions it's asked, but it would mean like you can't just have no consequences if you make mistakes genuinely or you take money. There has to be consequences or a business wouldn't be viable. So that's the second thing, right? So they got some things wrong, absolutely. They prosecuted, which is quite outrageous based on lies. But there has to be a recognition that these problems did not start with Horizon. You know, I was in 3 or 4 years when I first started, in the 90s. I was at a postman's house because there was a raid with the security branch. You had, in today's money, £50,000 of parcels and money out of letters. Obviously, that was in the 90s. I was at a Crown office where a member of staff had losses on a regular basis. The auditors wanted to go into a locker up the stairs, and she wouldn't let them, and I was almost fighting with them. But when they did get in a locker, she had a £1,000 bag of £20 notes that had been done to send to the remittance unit, and she had kept it. We had a small village post office that my staff ran until the postmaster could sell it, who admitted he had bought it for £60,000. It didn't make enough money. He had been there 3 years. He had taken £30,000. This was in the mid-90s. So, you know, for me, it's not Alice in Wonderland that no one ever would take money or make mistakes. That's Alice in Wonderland stuff. So what I'm saying quite clearly, it has to be more nuanced than what you've been. And that's why the kind of comments I've made regarding some of the organisations, some of the witnesses, is because it takes no cognizance of that. And some of the TV programmes, you look at, for example, you take the ITV documentary, no background in the sense that these kind of things, people had losses and it affected their life before we had Horizon. Nothing about that. Nothing about the sheer volumes of transactions. And again, one of the issues I would say about this Horizon inquiry, have you actually tried to find out the kind of billions of volumes that were done and the percentage of people claiming there was a mistake? It'll probably be less than 1%, but you just haven't done any of that. And so that's all I want to say, that I think there has to be better balance and better judgment than where we've ended up.
Right. Thank you very much for making your witness statement. Thank you very much for giving oral evidence during the course of today. So that brings today's proceedings to a close, and we'll resume again on Tuesday morning at 9:45 with, I think, Mr. Gareth Jenkins. Is that correct, Mr. Blake?
That's correct, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.